Here is the Golden Rule on its way to its next stop in Rhode Island.
Comparing the amount of time Biden's been in office with the same amount of time Trump was in office, at that point in his term, that Biden has actually approved more fossil fuel infrastructure than Trump did.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. We'll be showing some QR codes during the program, so you might want to take out your cell phones. So the Israeli army is adding to their story of why their soldiers shot to death 3-year-old Mohammed Tamimi. First, they had said that their sniper shot the 3-year-old when an Israeli forces had come under 10 minutes of Palestinian firing. Supposedly, gunmen had fired at soldiers guarding a Jewish settlement. Now they say an army officer searching the area heard shots and saw a suspicious vehicle and fired shots into the air. That prompted another soldier who heard those shots to open fire on the Tamimi's car, believing that the gunmen were using it for their getaway. The gunman being a father and his 3-year-old. Anyway, the army has decided not to discipline the killer of Mohammed Tamimi in any way. It's all junk, lies, excuses. By the way, why does the Israeli army have a watchtower, an army watchtower, over a Palestinian West Bank town of Nabi Saleh? Sure, people in the town stage protests against a settlement that has taken their land and a well, but those are righteous actions. By the way, if the name Tamimi sounds familiar to you, recall the name Ahed Tamimi, who, when she was a teenager several years ago, on a day when an Israeli soldier shot her cousin, slapped an Israeli soldier. She is also from Nabi Saleh. We've set up a website about the killing of Mohammed Tamimi with some facts about the case and some ideas about what to do. Go to thestruggle.org and then to our campaigns section. Or just use your cell phone and this QR code to get to the site. Recall Omar As'ad, the near 80-year-old man, handcuffed, gagged, and blindfolded in the dead of winter in 2022 by Israeli soldiers, who was then left at a building construction site where he died. Because he was a U.S. citizen, the news got some attention in this country. This week, the Israeli Advocate General said there would be no criminal charges filed against any of the soldiers involved. Of course, no surprise there. Maybe Secretary of State Blinken will wring his hands and express concern. Obviously, the U.S. has no way to influence Israel. The apartheid state doesn't depend on us for anything, except $4 billion a year in total military support. If the U.S. withheld just some of that, Israeli officials would snap to attention. Join the 750 people who are calling for an international investigation and justice for Omar As'ad by signing this petition. Now get this. Next week, Congress will be honoring a political leader who stands against everything that the U.S. supposedly stands for, including support for Ukraine. Leaders of both houses of Congress and both political parties have invited the Hindu supremacist Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, to address Congress and share his wisdom. As we mentioned last week, India is lapping up all the Russian oil it can find. Plus, Modi heads an extremist party that thinks India only belongs to those of the Hindu religion. Millions of Muslims have lost their citizenship, and there have been many cases of lynchings by Hindu supremacist mobs. There's going to be a big demonstration near the White House at noon on the 22nd, led, interestingly enough, by Hindus, the group Hindus for Human Rights. Short of attending that, sign the petition sponsored by RBM calling on Congress to withdraw its invitation to Modi. Here's the QR code. As we record, word reaches us that Daniel Ellsberg has died. Corporate news mentioned him positively for exposing the Pentagon lies about the Vietnam War, but probably will not talk about what he has been opposing in recent decades, the plans of all the major powers for nuclear war. In New London this week, the anti-nuclear boat named the Golden Rule was no doubt something he supported. This is the boat in the harbor. The sign refers to the treaty that makes possession of nuclear weapons a crime. Unfortunately, none of the countries known to possess nuclear weapons has signed this treaty. Here is the Golden Rule on its way to its next stop in Rhode Island. The huge building it was passing was General Dynamics, the major weapons-making corporation. After it left, there was a rally and a brief march. The banner reads, "Disarm or the sky will fall." Anti-nuclear activist Frida Berrigan talked to me about the purpose of the Golden Rule.
So the Golden Rule is a historic peace ship, and in the 1950s it sought to sail into the Pacific waters where the United States was doing above sea nuclear testing. And the Golden Rule never made it all the way, but above ground nuclear testing did stop, in large part because of international fury and outrage at this poisoning of our environment and sickening of people. So Veterans for Peace and others found the Golden Rule in the garbage can, basically, and resurrected it. And so the boat that we welcomed here yesterday is a resurrected relic of the anti-nuclear movement in the United States, and as sort of a call to all of us to resurrect that movement for the next generation of nuclear weapons that are being built, and for the work that is ahead as we're 90 seconds to nuclear midnight.
I asked about where the boat was going next.
It came here from New Haven and Essex, Connecticut. It's here in London, and it's sailed off to Providence now, and then will make its way up to Maine. And then it wants to go inland and traverse all of the navigable waters of the United States.
I asked about the boat's current mission.
I think it's drawing people's attention to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and the Veterans for Peace's work for nuclear disarmament. So I think the first thing that it's trying to do is just alert the American people to the fact that we're 90 seconds to nuclear midnight, that we're spending billions of dollars on nuclear weapons, that we're in active threat back and forth with Russia threatening the use of nuclear weapons, and that for the most part this is happening without any hue and cry from the American people. It's background noise, even to people who are paying very close attention to geopolitics.
Getting back to Daniel Ellsberg, he was part of the campaign diffusenuclearwar.org, which has come up with practical steps for the gradual elimination of nuclear weapons.
Down by the riverside, I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield. Down by the riverside, gonna study war no more. I ain't 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 gonna study war no more. Who's got a good one to put?
Now for an interview about a fine climate protest in front of the White House on June 8th.
What do you want? Climate justice! Now!
I'll be speaking to Melinda Tuhus, a reporter and climate activist. She'll be speaking to us from Hamden, Connecticut, and she's going to talk about an action that was taken in Washington, D.C. Good evening, Melinda.
Good evening, Stan. How are you?
All right. I understand you're not happy with the way the Biden administration is dealing with climate issues.
That would be an understatement. One of the groups that we work with found that up to now, comparing the amount of time Biden's been in office with the same amount of time Trump was in office, at that point in his term, that Biden has actually approved more fossil fuel infrastructure than Trump did. So as part of, a big coalition of groups, frontline groups and other supporters, kept Senator Joe Manchin's dream bill of requiring the completion of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. We kept it out of 3 bills at the end of last year, 3 critical must-pass bills, and we were able to get it taken out every time. So now he added it into with Biden's blessing and approval, added it into the totally unrelated, bill to deal with the debt ceiling. The Mountain Valley Pipeline is a 303-mile fracked gas pipeline that, if completed, would bring fracked gas from northern West Virginia to southwestern Virginia, and with a possible extension into North Carolina. So there's been groups in all those states, really amazing and incredibly dedicated and hardworking frontline groups that have been fighting this for about 9 years. And it's been almost killed so many times. And we've been waiting for the final blow to fall. And the reason it's been almost defeated is because they can't build it and follow the law. So every time they do something and, different groups take them to court, they lose. And it was really all but dead last year. Early last year, they were like, boom, boom, these decisions that, had them really on the ropes. And then Manchin decided that he really, really wanted this pet project. And his fellow Republican Senator, Shelley Moore Capito, was all on board with it too, but he was the one pushing it. And he's a coal baron. He makes at least $1 million a year from one of the dirtiest coal operations in the country.
You're talking about Manchin, right?
Talking about Joe Manchin, yeah.
Okay.
So we, after that happened, well, to be honest, this event was already planned, but for June 8th. but when this came down, this decision to require the MVP to be completed, that sort of became the focus and the urgent message that we wanted
And
to
let me
get out.
stop you for a second. Not only did they say this thing had to be completed, they sort of sidestep normal court review. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I was going to mention that.
Okay.
Yeah, they basically took because of its location, when a case goes to appeal, it's in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers those states. And this bill basically takes any future, court case, any appeal out of the Fourth Circuit and gives it to the DC Circuit, because apparently they think they get better rulings. Although the DC Circuit recently ruled against something that was related to the MVP too. So I don't know if, there's still some hope that maybe my experience with other cases in the DC Circuit is not that it's, super conservative or super, just following whatever the wishes are of the fossil fuel industry. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, they did that. And they basically said that this new law that's now done, because Biden signed it, is, taking any decisions, any regulatory or court decisions, and it's kind of throwing them out the window. It's pretty unbelievable.
So on the 8th, you and others, were there groups involved who planned this action?
Yeah, there were a lot of groups. There's the frontline groups. There's a group called Power in West Virginia, and I'll try to remember what the initials stand for. And there's other groups, Appalachian Voices. There's a group called 7 Directions of Service, which is an indigenous group or indigenous-led group in North Carolina that's fighting it. And there's, and then support organizations like all the climate groups, basically.
Yeah.
There's a new group. It's very new. It's young people. It's called Climate Defiance. And the other group I should mention is, because they were very important, is Third Act, the DC, Virginia, Maryland chapter of Third Act, which is a group founded by Bill McKibben, especially appealing to people over 60, which is why it's our third act. And they take up 2 issues nationally. One is democracy, and the other is the banks funding, supporting the fossil fuel industry. So we had 20 rocking chairs. This is our signature. We actually, a group I'm part of, not Third Act, because they didn't even exist. But a few years ago, we, Beyond Extreme Energy, did a sit-in in front of Chase Bank headquarters with rocking chairs. And it's sort of caught on among older people. So you have to schlep the rocking chairs all over. We had, I think, 20. And then we had other people sitting in other things, or standing around or sitting on the sidewalk. And I was sitting with 2 young people very involved in this other group called Climate Defiance. And they've been doing things for about a year, but they sort of really made a big splash when they basically tried to block people from attending the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where all the politicians and all the reporters would be. So, and they've done a lot of other very in-your-face kind of actions, nonviolent, but very militant. So
yeah, I see that he were so embarrassed Manchin at some event that he just left.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, different things have happened. I mean, they've interrupted talks by several of Biden's, people in his administration. And then today, and I don't even know what happened. It's so recent. They put out an urgent appeal for people in the DC area to come down to protest and try to, block or interrupt this event where the League of Conservation Voters was giving Biden an award for being such a great
award. Wonderful
climate leader. So people have their own points of view, I guess. So I don't know what happened with that, but they were planning to do something there. So
describe the event in detail. So where were you on the 8th?
We were in front of the White House fence there's a wide sidewalk, and it's right across from Lafayette Park, which is where many thousands of protests have happened over the decades and centuries. So we had some speakers. We had some fabulous music. There's a woman from Southern Virginia, from around Roanoke. She goes by BJ. I think it's BJ Lark. You have to forgive my terrible memory, but I think that's her name. And boy, can she sing. She was amazing. And she, several months ago, brought a whole group of young people to perform with her at this other big event we did in DC around the banks. But she was there, and there weren't a lot of speakers. There were some frontline people, and then Justin Pearson, Tennessee State Rep Justin Pearson came and spoke and stood with us. And then Rashida Tlaib, Representative Congresswoman from Detroit. And oh my goodness, she was so powerful. She was like, she says, I can't believe this. Why? Because, the other thing I should mention, last Wednesday was the worst air day in the country, especially, in the whole up the Eastern Seaboard, and certainly in DC as well as in New York. And Thursday it was a little better, but it was still terrible. The air was terrible. Wow. So we were all sitting there. Most people were wearing, N95, KN95 masks, because it was very dangerous not to wear a mask. So we were there, and Rashida was talking about how when she grew up in a poor area in Detroit, she thought it was normal to have all this pollution, and people couldn't go out. And it's the same thing now, with this these alerts for air pollution, which I'm sure we'll see again. So at one point, we were in Lafayette Park, and then a bunch of us crossed over to be in front of the White House fence. And you're not supposed to be there, but they didn't arrest us. We were there for the whole action was 2 hours. So we were on one side part of the time, and then we went over to the other side. And, the visuals were really amazing. We had our rocking chairs, which are very visible, and actually have all been painted, beautifully painted. And then we had, I don't remember how many, maybe a dozen big red umbrellas that were painted also when they were open. And we thought we could use them for shade if we needed to, but fortunately it wasn't that hot. It just was horrible air. And then we had a pipeline in front of us that said, I think it said no MVP. Can't remember exactly because I couldn't see it from where I was sitting. And then the people in the rocking chairs, we sort of tied our hands together and looped through some of the rocking chair arms with scarves, just, sort of to be in solidarity, make it harder for the cops to just come and pull us all away if they were going to do that. But then they didn't do that. So we ended it at 4:00, and it's still in in motion. We're not sure I'm not sure what the very next step is. I mean, there will be lawsuits, and it looks like, I guess they would be, I don't know if they will be heard in the district court first, or they're just going to take them straight to the DC appellate court, which isn't legal, but they might do that. And what will happen there, but people are pretty committed that it's not going to be built and have frack gas flowing through it. So
and we're going over what's the expression? We're going down the tubes. I mean, Biden smiles and passes these, agrees to these terrible things with pipelines and the Willow. What is the Willow?
Willow project is a project in Alaska that we also thought was not going to be approved. He approved it. It's in Alaska, and it's largely, I think, in indigenous parts of the state, and and like any project, the indigenous people weren't uniformly opposed. Some were in favor because of the jobs, and others were very much opposed because of especially in Alaska, that the Arctic is heating up 4 times faster than the rest of the world. So, and then you build these other projects and it melts the permafrost. And for the Willow Project to happen, they are going to have to, like, I can't remember what they're going to do. They have to like refreeze the tundra or something, because it's going to, it melts and it releases all this methane, which is a incredibly damaging, climate warming gas. And that's what natural gas is. It's methane, and it leaks from one end to the other. It leaks. And so there's been studies done that show it's actually worse for the climate than coal. And coal is terrible, but it's not as bad for public health. It's bad, but it's not as bad as coal for public health.
Yeah. So he's doing all this, and he gives $1 trillion supposedly, and most of it's just incentives for electricity. It's not stopping any, not putting any limits on these greenhouse gases. And some groups think he's doing something, and we're going over the precipice.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad. Well, and he's coming to Connecticut, right?
He's coming on Friday, 2 days from now. Yeah, I don't know when this is going to air, but yeah, he's coming to sort of raise the profile of this conference about gun violence. Going to call for banning assault weapons. I'm all for that, but I'm not in favor of a lot of the other things he's doing, especially around climate. It's really incredible that he ran as the climate president. He made all these promises, and it's just out the window.
And to add on an up note, some photos from the New York Botanical Garden on June 1st, when the roses were at their height. That's our program for today. I'm Stanley Heller. See you next week for The Struggle Video News.